Welcome to another episode of Positive Solutions for Life. This is Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Brian Curtis. Brian was an electrician for 25 years, and after these years of experience working with other people, he quit his job to venture out into the unknown and follow his heart. After months and years of creating and receiving, he learned that the process was leading to a reconciliation with the self. He has dedicated his life to helping people understand how to heal the heart by unlocking their heart's true potential, building meaningful, authentic relationships, and living a life of confidence and fulfillment. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here too, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. So with that, can you just start off by sharing just a little bit more about yourself, your personal journey and how it has led to where you are today?
Sure. So, like you said in the intro, I worked as an electrician for 25 years. And so I worked in public and private entities, mostly private in the beginning as a construction electrician. And then I worked for a public utility for 10 years. And when you work in larger and larger organizations, it gets harder and harder to connect with people. Uh, Jobs get temporary and you don't, work with people in the same way in a lot of different ways. And conflicts arise and you try and stay out of it as much as possible. And we don't realize it, but when we spend half the time with somebody, especially when we're spending the same time, those are family to us.
Mhm.
And so you try to create family at work, but if your work environment is preventing you from trying to create that family, there's always this dysfunction, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was one of the leading causes of me leaving work is because I saw so many conflicts arise. And then I saw sometimes terrible accidents at work that happened where people were put in the hospital because conflicts arose and people stopped communicating. And, I witnessed a big breaker explosion where some of my best friends were hurt pretty badly, and spent, a couple months in a burn unit.
Mhm.
So seeing all that stuff and then seeing the after effects of that, where, uh, people had a tendency to just point fingers at each other because it's a business, it's a public entity. So whenever there's an accident, people worry about liability
Yeah.
instead of just picking each other up and supporting one another. They try and do that. We try to do that as family, but if the way the business is structured doesn't allow you to do that, there's always the conflicts never stop, right?
Wow.
But those conflicts just escalate. And so, that was my main reason for leaving. How can I teach the business community and teach, people in general how to work together in a healthier way,
Mhm. Mhm.
how to, treat each other, and because our hearts want to grow closer together. That's
Yeah.
the natural state of our heart. And when we focus too much on the external and, the thing, how much money we're making or how much money we're not making or trying to compare ourselves to each other in any way, it always creates this block of us growing closer together. And so um, that's basically been my journey. And, I started by writing a book and trying to partner with other software companies to decentralize decision making. So as a group, we could make decisions as a group together
Mhm.
and create things together. So that has been my journey to date.
Well, I mean, that's just really intriguing because, we all want to connect with others. And, we spend a third or more of our time at work. And if we can't connect with the people around us, that causes that disconnect. And then the conflicts arise. And if the structure is not there, like you're saying, it's hard to live a third to a half of our lives disconnected. And
Yeah.
then I feel like that could almost carry over into home life after work.
It does, incredibly, right? Because I'm not you fall into self-care because
Mhm.
if your work environment's so conflicted, you go home and it's all about self-care. And so it's harder to help. It can be harder to help your kids who
Mhm.
maybe might be dealing with other kids at school that are confronted with the same problems that their parents are going through in their work environments. So those kids are suffering from a disconnect at home that's resulting from, to me, this is all long-term generational trauma, I think, that we see in society that is
Mhm.
slowly kind of coming to the surface. If you look at it like a growing organism that's becoming more aware of what it's not doing for itself, you know, uh, so many coaches and consultants out there teach self-care because, you really have to learn to take care of yourself and
Mhm.
get in the right state of mind and body, above everything else.
Right.
Whatever is going on out there, make sure that you're in the right state, because if you're not in the right state when you're with your friends and family, then they're going to want to spend less time with you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we've all witnessed that, or at least from my end. I mean, I know when I'm in that crabby mood, like no one wants to be around me. And sometimes I don't even want to be around myself. So
Yeah.
how are we connecting with others? We don't even connect with ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think that's a true thing, like, you mentioned is like, how do you connect with your own self? Self-care is sometimes, this, I want to say external things, but it's also internal. But I think more times than not, we think of sleeping or exercise or eating well, but self-care is taking care of what's going on inside our heart and our soul and our spirit. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is something that I teach that I've had to force myself to realize over a long time. And it's the only reason that I can teach it is because, yeah, the internal state is the only thing that really matters. It doesn't matter what you're eating. It doesn't matter. It does matter what you're eating, but
Mhm.
your internal state will dictate uh, the external actions that you're going through. So if you have negative emotional attachments, you'll find yourself in bad eating habits where maybe you're overeating or undereating.
Mhm.
You're not trying to you don't you're not feeling your body the way your body wants to naturally
Mhm.
exist. And it's usually comes from fears of what might happen tomorrow, regrets of what happened yesterday, or even negative, views of yourself because of maybe what you have or haven't done, all
Mhm.
these false perceptions that we have of ourselves. And we unconsciously will project those onto other people,
Yeah.
not even realizing it a lot of times, saying, hey, you should do this or you should do that, instead of just taking the time to really it comes down to meditation practices. I think yoga is a really good meditation practice because it helps moves energy in the body
Mhm.
and quiet the mind. I've gotten to where I do it almost every morning, and if I forget to do it, I notice it because I'm not in the right state of being for the day.
Right.
Um, if I go without my morning meditation and yoga practice by noon, I can tell that I haven't done it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's making sure that you're quieting the mind and staying grounded. To get to the right place. And
Mhm.
then you'll find that everything else will naturally align with that state of being. If you're not taking care of that internal state and then not staying attached to any ideas of, what I should be or shouldn't be. Because ultimately it's all about us getting closer together. And we can't get closer together unless we're in the right state. So yeah.
Right. The internal state. It's that quieting of the mind a little bit and the heart to be able to like really tune in to the body and tune into yourself. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what I'm hearing? And because I totally relate to, whatever mood, internal state, whatever I'm feeling or whatever, if I'm stressed, anxious or whatever, it does influence my actions and my behaviors. It will influence the choices I make. It'll influence what I do, what I eat, how I say things. And I think if we just kind of stop and like reflect, all of us can come up with numerous examples of times that it has gone bad, didn't end well, and other times where it's like, oh wow, that worked out well. How did that happen? But we don't reflect very much.
Yeah. The hardest part is, and this is the journey that everybody has to go through, is to make sure that you are compassionate for yourself and don't beat up on yourself when you don't meet those goals. Let's say, if I don't do the things that I feel like I need to do, and let's say I spent a whole week where I'm in kind of a negative state and I'm eating too much. And then, it can be too easy at the end of that to just beat yourself up over it instead of
Correct.
just let's just reset. I need to constantly reset daily and forget about these stupid things that I was doing in the past that I was causing myself harm and just let it go.
Yeah.
Letting things go is one of the most difficult things. We constantly try to bring things up from the past,
Mhm.
not realizing that that's what creates continues to create that negative state of being. Yeah.
Yeah, just that, we carry around those negativity things like in this backpack. And, they could be all, we're carrying around, we're just tossing them back, and they get heavy after a while, but we need to like open it up and release and let go of all of that on a daily basis, sometimes more often than not, but oftentimes we carry it around all week. And but to be compassionate about ourselves, that is really key because we do tend to beat ourselves up. Now I know, talking as a female, I know for sure that we do that. I don't know about you guys out there, I know you do, but I mean
Everybody does. Yeah, that's
everybody
fine.
does. And it's so hard to like, oh, and then just like throw in the towel and give it up. And like I've been on this negative journey for the 3 days, so you know why stop now? But we have to remember why we need to and how it feels when we're feeling good. Do you
Yeah.
think people just don't know how to feel good anymore?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you're always looking for something out there to make me feel good, right? Whether it's oh, I need to go to this place. I got to go to my happy place. Well, until you can find that happy place within, no matter where you're at, that external place is just not going to do it for you. It might temporarily be, oh God, I'm so glad I'm here. But then once you're there, after 20, 30 minutes, then you'll find yourself falling into the same patterns that you did when you were at home or wherever, because it's just that internal state that all of us need to, maintain. It's something that I have had to personally deal with because I always looked at, well, even the project that I'm doing, that the decentralized decision making.
Mhm.
Um, I always thought getting people connected in the right way so they can make decisions together would help fix things. But if all those people haven't done what we're talking about here, then they're just going to be fighting. They'll never come to an agreement on anything. And it's just going to be a toxic environment no matter what you do. So, um, yeah, I mean, this has been I found out that this is my primary focus, and it's
Mhm.
led me to understand why so many people are doing what they're doing and people falling that healing journey,
Yeah.
and people fall into different healing journeys in different ways.
Mhm.
We see Reiki healers out there, we see other people, but ultimately it's a personal journey.
Mhm.
You can temporarily try to help somebody with their temporary state of mind from the outside, but unless they're doing the work for themselves, it doesn't matter what you do, right?
Mhm.
And that's, so educating is so important, where you can educate people on, hey, this is what you need to do for yourself. This
Right.
is how you need to show for yourself, and this is how it should um, manifest in your external world, where you're creating these equal give and take relationships, and you're
Mhm.
valuing each other equally. You're respecting yourself, but you're also respecting other people, and you're having compassion for them no matter
Mhm.
what they're going through, because you have been through that. So, and maybe are still even still currently going through it. We healing is a long process that happens over time, for sure.
Yeah. And I think the key is kind of what you said is you first have to start by being open to like healing yourself. Because I mean, I was a therapist for over 20 years, and you don't know how many times people just come into your office and go to fix me. Like, and I'm like, are you willing to? Like, because the door's only open so far. And, there's just a slight chance that I can able to do that, but it's a bigger chance if you're open to wanting to heal and really dig in and do the work of internalizing some of the things that we're talking about. So it's really true. It's like it's a difficult journey, I think, for some people, and it's kind of scary for some people to even think about looking back over their life and taking responsibility for their the majority of the issue. Like, I mean, it sounds bad, but
Yeah.
like it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we are all like, when we are blaming others or we're complaining about something, I find it's really something that they don't like about themselves.
Yeah.
And they're just externalizing it that way without having to really internalize it.
There's a weird dichotomy there, right? Because you have to forgive yourself and let it go, but at the same time, you have to take responsibility for yourself and make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do so that you can let it go. Because if
Mhm.
you there's a it's a constant battle of the mind, where you have to let the past go and let it go to rest, but then at the same time taking responsibility for changing the way what kind of habits you're doing,
Mhm.
and what you're focusing on.
And I think that's a really, it's a shift definitely in the mindset of like letting it go. And I want to say letting go of the emotional attachment to it so
Mhm.
that we can kind of more deep down kind of figure it out, because the emotions are always riding on the surface, it seems like. And so if you let go of the emotional attachment to something, then I wonder how you can open the doors to really getting the lesson or what you need to learn from it so that you can heal it for long term
Yeah,
instead of just
that's
today.
a really good point. And the emotion, like, this is something that I witnessed in that accident that I referenced earlier, is, I saw a lot of people that were combative, blaming each other for everything, right? Trying to control everybody else but themselves, and which led to that accident. But what they found was, in the end, they realized that they actually cared more about each other after the accident, and that none of that stuff really mattered. So
Mhm.
the emotional attachment to the past and letting that go to make sure that they move forward in the right way. And I saw those people were healed in a lot of different ways,
Mhm.
but it was still incremental, right? We still see incremental healing over time.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the most difficult things to do as a therapist. Like, if you go to school for psychology, how do you, because if you look at it as a growing organism and saying, okay, there's nothing wrong with you technically,
Mhm.
but in order to sell a service as a psychologist, you have to say you need help.
Right, right.
So how do you balance that, right? It's very difficult, because you can't say well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just going through a process, but at the same time selling that service of saying that you need my help. So that's one of the most difficult things that really,
Mhm.
I think, especially in sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure it probably is maybe even part of the reason that maybe moved you into podcasting. I'm not sure. I don't know
Well,
about your journey.
it is a little bit. I mean, if you want to, because, for me, at least for me, therapy it was good. I loved working with individuals, but yet I wanted to reach a bigger type audience, more people. I mean, I felt like I was just kind of saying the same things, to the same people, the same issues people were working on. You need to like, look in, take responsibility, make some different choices, change the mindset a little bit. And it feel like I was on repeat. So here it was like, okay, and I was getting kind of picky who I wanted to work with,
Right.
just to be honest,
Yeah,
not everybody relates to me and I don't relate to everybody. And so in this way, I can share a lot of the things that I talked with people about and tried to assist them through, but hopefully reaching a larger audience and also being able to talk to other wonderful people that have different ideas because I love getting different perspectives. And I think that's what we need to be open because we don't want to shove just one way down somebody's throat because it's not for everybody.
yeah,
And there's a lot of different healing people out there, in all aspects. If you go Western medicine, Eastern medicine, and some of it works for some people and some of it doesn't, but it's just giving the people opportunity to hear something different and to maybe get a different perspective to be open to something else.
right. Yeah, there's so many healing modalities, Qigong, versus yoga, or, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Qigong, but it's just basically just moving energy in the body, walking in the body, and it always comes down to quieting your mind. And
Mhm,
you'll know, and I think this is universal, when you sit down in one place and turn everything off, make sure there's no distractions. Um, if you can't immediately come to a place of rest in your mind and just be, there's always some kind of internal dialogue that will give you clues as to what is your emotional attachment that maybe you need to work on.
mhm,
And I think in a lot of ways, fasting really helps in this avenue. Meditation and fasting both, just the quiet meditation,
mhm,
you can call it transcendental meditation or whatever, and fasting forces you to deal with the constant attachment of needing to to constantly feed yourself.
mhm. Yep. Yeah.
Because I mean, most people, unless you're diabetic, can do a 3 day water fast.
Mhm,
If you do a 3 day water fast, I guarantee, and you haven't done it recently, or I guarantee you'll deal with some kind of emotional attachment. There's no way around it. Because you'll be like, God, I really want that. It's just, but if you sit down and quiet the mind, usually you'll find it's an attachment to something else other than food,
mhm. Yeah.
um, that you're trying to keep yourself busy with that you can't confront. So,
It's an eye-opening experience because I've done that. I've done that 3-day water fast probably, oh, it's probably a few months ago. I had a guest on that was talking about it or I was listening to his podcast and he was talking about that. So I tried it. And it is very interesting to observe yourself during that time
yeah,
about how you rely on food for different reasons and how just mindless it is to
yeah,
pick up something or go through something and just see something and that constant need to stuff ourselves with something. And it's very interesting, if you can do it, try it because and observe, just keep a journal of, your
what you go
observations.
through internally, right?
It'd be just, it's amazing. It's eye-opening
It is.
because you're focused on something else. You're focused on yourself and how you're reacting to the world. And there's a lot of emotions that come through there and a
Yeah.
lot of brain things.
The last time I did, well, one of them, I've done one more recently, but one of the first times I did it, I remember it was maybe the night of the second day, I ended up just going through just breakdown and tears, bawling, just because I just realized that I was externalizing the way I was looking at everybody else, right? It was so many judgments that I had of myself. I was judging of the business community and different things in a different way.
Mhm.
And I just thought, man, after I let all that stuff go, I woke up the next morning. I felt so good. I had so much energy because
Yeah.
you don't realize it, but you're actually releasing that negative energy, and it's a
Mhm.
natural process. That's why it can become too easy to get down on ourselves, temporarily when we're going through things. But then you'll go through blockages and
Mhm.
release things, and then you realize it was just part of a process. And we're all kind of like growing plants in a lot of ways. you know.
Well, then my plants must be flourishing because they go through a water fast a lot. Like they don't the drought drown cycle. But I think what you bring up is this like a lot of times when we, food, when we stuff ourselves with other things, it can be food, it can be external things, it could be social media, it could be, binge watching movies, whatever. When we're trying to constantly like bring in things, like we don't have time to quiet the mind. Our body is trying to release what you're putting into it, but it doesn't have enough time. And it takes practice. It's not
Yes.
easy. When you talk about, oh, we just need to quiet our mind, I'm like, man, that's hard. I don't know. I'm sorry. But I sit down and especially it's like in the morning and I'm like wanting to do this little meditation before getting out of bed. And half the time, I mean, you have to practice it more often and this will go away. But initially, if I haven't done it for a while, it's just like my brain is like going all over about the things that I need to do that day or this week or, whatever. But once you get through that and you do it enough, then it like sends signals and messages to what's really important. But I think some people just stop too soon. Is that, I mean, or they just like, oh, I can't do it.
Yeah, or you have a big breakthrough and it was like, oh God, I feel so good. I'm gonna go stuff myself,
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I have to do it. I have to figure out a different way to come off of a 3-day fast. I noticed the last time it was just like, oh, I'm done. Yeah, it's like not good.
And then you'll end up in a negative state after that, and you're just like, oh God, what did I do to
I'd have
myself?
to go through another 3-day
I
fast to
felt
get rid of
so
that.
good.
And I just ruined it. But then we have to go, oh, all right, just notice. No judgment here, just notice. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. But yeah, we all go through it. I mean,
We
that's why,
do.
it does give you a lot more compassion for the self and unconditional love for the self. And
Hmm.
unconditional love is such a powerful tool because that creates a state where you're continuing to grow.
Yeah.
I think that uh, you just want to be on a growth cycle. That's all you really consider. You don't have none of us actually. People say, well, none of us are perfect, but I would argue that I would say everything is perfect. When you look at it from a whole, it's um, just knowing that will put you in a place of peace a lot easier than trying if you're of the mindset that it's like, well, there's all these things wrong with this, with me
Yeah.
or all these other things. Never look at it like that. Always say, like I'm making incremental changes daily to become the person that I really know that I am, and
Yeah.
where my heart space is at. So
Right. It's just being okay with whatever is going on right now is what's right, you
yeah,
know, and there's nothing wrong. There's always growing, there's always learning. And with that, we can change that. But if we go the other way and think things are just something's wrong, we're in this constant battle of nothing's right. And therefore, we're never going to be happy
yeah,
because we're just in that wrong, like chasing
you'll
the wrong
always be
thing.
in conflict with what's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about you and your coaching programs?
They can go to becurtis.org if they're interested more in me. I'm in the middle of redeveloping my circuit breaker website where I was trying to build software, but that's a kind of a work in progress, because you really have to master the internal state to
Mhm.
be when you can really let go of the external. That's when we're going to see communities and businesses really start to come together and start
Right.
working, creating together.
Right.
I think, as to the point we just talked about, it's too easy to see the constriction in the market like what we're seeing now.
Mhm.
But that's just an indication of the healing that's going on the inside before people can come back together. And I think it's probably going to happen at the coaching consulting level first,
Mhm.
because those are the people that pull themselves out of business first. The therapists,
Yeah.
other people where start working together to start teaching communities how to work together and build together, to build the kind of society we want to build together, instead of hanging on to the past and kind of just recreating the generational trauma that we're at the end of a cycle.
Mhm.
This is a huge end of a cycle, moving from, you can say we're moving from age of Pisces to Aquarius, but it's actually a real astrological thing where, every 6,000 years we go through kind of a quarter cycle, and we're at the end of a 24,000 year cycle. So this is a huge cycle, and it's not something that can be rushed.
Yeah.
It might take 40 years. It might take, who knows how long.
Right.
So be patient with yourself, be patient with everyone around you, and understand it's just perfect.
It's fine.
Yeah,
You're
it's
fine
fine.
right now. If you want to get a little bit better, just get like 1% better today.
Yeah.
Just a little
Yeah.
bit. Those incremental changes
Yeah.
happen over time.
Yeah.
Well,
And if you feel like you have to eat a dozen donuts, well, eat a dozen donuts, but you
and don't beat
probably
yourself
regret
up. Don't beat yourself
it.
up over
Don't beat
it.
yourself up over it.
Make a
Right.
different change tomorrow. I mean, I actually told that to somebody I was presenting one time, and they were like this really beating themselves up for just really craving like a Reese's peanut butter cup or something. And they just felt really bad because they stopped and they got one and they, ate it. And I'm like, don't beat yourself up over it. If you wanted it, enjoy it. Don't make like a double whammy negative, with it,
Yeah.
thinking like, where did you think that was bad? Obviously, health crazes and stuff, you say, reduce sugar or whatever. And it's like, okay, but embrace it. And then you know what? You probably won't need one for a while if
Yeah.
you accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to enjoy things in moderation.
Right.
There are some things that are fairly destructive, even in the short term. Like
Mhm.
I found that, I like wine, but even one glass of wine, it depends what you're eating, right?
Yeah.
If you're sitting down with a big plate of pasta, wine is actually pretty good to help digest it because it'll break down the pasta. But anything more than one glass, yeah, it's just the next day I'm going to have much less energy.
Yeah.
Even even later that day, I'll probably have a lot less energy because I just ate a lot of pasta and I drank a glass of wine. I'll
Yeah.
probably take a nap.
But it's that reflection and that internalization of how is this making me feel? It's that self-reflection that kind of can help you process whether that was good or not for another day, another
Right.
time. You may not want to do that 3 days in a row. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
an occasional thing, this might work. I know what's going to happen, and you can prep yourself.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just, some people just don't take the time to say, oh, what is this actually doing to me?
Yeah. And if you get your body in a pretty healed state where you'll find that your body will start to regenerate more frequently if you allow it to.
Mhm.
It's much easier to sit down for the holidays and just go ahead. Okay, I'm not gonna care about nothing. The next day is much easier because you're not going to be attached to just doing that over and over and over, and
Right.
your body will recuperate and recover much faster. As you get older, people talk about this. It's hard. It takes longer for the body to heal when you get older, but a lot of times that comes from a long history of just too much toxification.
Yeah.
Where if you're toxifying the body for a long period of time, like your entire life, your body's going to have a hard time healing much earlier than it would be somebody that's just, I mean, everyone's seen it. We've seen
Mhm.
80-year-old yogis out there that
Yeah.
just sit in the cross position who eat, very little, but are super limber and super
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
and very active.
Yeah.
So the body will heal. You just have to allow it to heal.
You have to allow it to heal and we have to listen to it till we know what it needs and what it doesn't need.
Yeah.
And it sends you those messages, definitely.
Yeah. For sure.
As we wrap up today, is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with, or anything that I haven't touched on or we haven't talked about that you really, really want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think the most important thing is the one thing that we talked about that's really important is that you are perfect. Don't ever think that you're not perfect. You're perfect just the way you are.
Mhm.
Um, and if you don't feel that way, ask yourself why. Why don't I feel that way? And it's probably because you just haven't put yourself on a growth cycle.
Mhm.
Because if we stagnate in any way, it means that we're holding on to something in the past that we need to let go of and just to put ourselves on that growth cycle. And even if we are stagnating, it's the first step is to be consciously aware of it
Mhm.
and be okay with it
Yeah.
so that you can move forward. So,
Yeah. Let's just, be kind to ourselves. We're perfect the way we are. If we want to do something better, if we want to grow a little bit, we have those opportunities, and there's so many different ways we can to make us even just a little more perfect.
exactly. Right. More perfect. I like that.
More perfect than yesterday.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Brian.
Thank you, Peggy. I enjoyed being here.
Thank you.